All right. Sound check really quick. I got thinking. When I did a video, the video was titled. It was about Oscar De La Hoya, basically. I don't want to lose what I got here, so um, a commenter called Boxing Comments and Joe Lopez 40OZ. Right? Oh wow, 40 ounces. Anyway, Joe Lopez 40 ounces. um, some other people left some. I'm going to read over the comments, right? And it got pretty ugly. It really did. It got pretty ugly. All right. Um, so I'll tell you who put the comments in, and we'll go from there, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So anyway, um, Boxing Comments put good points. No, but let me give you context on the video, right? It was a video about Oscar De La Hoya, right? And how he was the face of boxing, right? And I give my thoughts, and if anybody wants to check out that video, go ahead, right? But anyway, so then Boxing Comments left this comment, right? Good points, but Mexicans are the most hated and discriminated race in the USA. Even a large percentage of African Americans hate on Mexicans, right? I replied, if you want to make statements like that, then at the very least, show me some data. I'm not going to say Mexicans do not get discriminated against. I've dealt with discrimination, but show me some data, not your anecdotal experience or your opinions on the matter. As for Mexican fighters, it is a stretch to say they're hated, especially when every fighter talks about Mexican style this and Mexican style that, and Russian Mexican, Manchester Mexican. And then Joe Lopez, 40 ounce, said, Mexican is not a race, it's a nationality. Right? And so I'm going to skip some people that were not in this conversation. Boxing Comments put, Mexicans are native to the USA. He continued, does Mexico have a race in your opinion, or how could that be what you said if scholars from all over the world have said the opposite from what you claim, such as Jose, is that Vasconcelos, who declared the Mexican race as the cosmic race for having traits from all over the world. I think you should read a little more and get educated. Viva la raza mexicana. Joe Lopez, 40 ounce, replied, keep believing your fairy tales. He put, a Mexican who is of European descent is somehow native to the United States of America. That was a question. I gave my input. You're both right and wrong. Mexican is a nationality in the sense that anyone who is a citizen of Mexico is Mexican. That can't really be disputed. Mexicans are multicultural, so to suggest we have no Spanish blood would be very misleading. In fact, the upper class in Mexico are primarily Spanish. This goes back to this class system that Spanish put in place. Most Mexicans are, as we were labeled, mestizo, with combinations of many tribes. Over the centuries, Mexicans mix so much, some families will have light-skinned and dark-skinned children from the same family. Joe Lopez, 40 ounce, replied, like I said before, being Mexican is a nationality, not a race. Anyone born in Mexico is considered a Mexican regardless of race. Boxing comments continue. It's going to get ugly in a little bit. Okay. Laughing my ass off. What the fuck? Dumb shit are you talking about? Only 10% of Mexicans have European ancestry, and only 30% of all Latin America has European ancestry. I guess me graduating from college with honors and having a degree on world history makes me dumb. By the way, I recommend you read the college book, The Mexican Reader on the History, Culture, and Politics. This way you won't sound stupid when you talk about Mexico. So for the meantime, stick to boxing. Lopez replied. Hold on. He didn't reply yet. Okay, he put, by the way, there is a section on that book about how pendejos covered Annapolis call themselves Spaniards, not knowing that Spain was an African Muslim land before the Catholics took over. So if Spaniards have African ancestry, does that make them African? You see how stupid you sound? You have no clue about history. Joe Lopez 40 ounce put, to me, I agree 100%. I did reply to boxing comments. I put, bro, please define what you're speaking of, cultural definitions or scientific definitions. I did ask him what college he went to. But I am a slug, UC Santa Cruz. The facts are demographically available. Only 10% of Mexicans have European ancestry, and Spain up to like the 1980s had an open border to Morocco, being that Muslim Africans had settled to Spain before the current Spaniard government. A huge percentage of Spaniards have African ancestry, but they don't call themselves African. They call themselves the Spaniard race. I put, no mames, way. You just got the statistics from Wikipedia. Laughing my ass off. He replied, by the way, sorry, bro. It's just that I take history, agriculture, and boxing serious, especially when they call me out on it. That's why I was tripping. If the factual info is everywhere, how can someone say that Mexicans are European? LOL, true. Joe Lopez 40 ounce replied, I never stated all Mexicans are European. Boxing Comments replied, actually, you were just telling fairy tale according to you. Someone got involved. Mexican isn't a race. Dumbass. Boxing Comments replied, what school taught you that? LOL. Please tell me so I can LOL louder. And this is Golden Glory who got involved in the conversation. Yeah, school taught me that, faggot. Boxing Comments replies, LOL, you went to faggot school. That explains everything. Ha, ha, ha. Golden Glory said, get cancer. All right. Now, it kind of ended as soon as I got involved. Right. So these are, before I give my commentary, the last comments I left. Right. I put, all right, guys, relax. Really? Everything depends on how you look at it and what you base it on. Majority of Mexico is mestizo. Majority of native and mestizo are poor. Majority of the rich in Mexico is light skin in skin color. I don't believe the European descent that you're talking about is the early Spaniards that founded New Spain, enslaved natives and created a class system. Those Spaniards didn't come with wives and women. They married native women, slept with native women, raped native women. Some Europeans migrated to Mexico once Mexico was founded on a nation that's European descent. Right? So check it out. Here's what's going on. I want to put this shit to rest, okay? Because this gets discussed a lot, right? And you always hear "Viva la raza," right? And I don't have a problem with that at all, okay? I have brown pride on the back of my car. Like, you know what I mean? It's all good. But it's not really about that. So there's a lot of specifics here that you need to break down, right? So number one, make no mistake about it, Mexico is multicultural. There's no way around that, right? And the idea, you know, and it's nothing against Boxing Comments or nothing like that, but Like, bro, there's no way. There is no way Mexico only has 10% European ancestry. Okay, I believe I know where you got that number from. That's why sometimes you could be wrong and right. So, first of all, once upon a time, right? Okay, when before any Europeans got here, right? In Mexico, you had a bunch of tribes. The main three, the Triple Alliance, was made up of the Aztec Empire. Okay, they were the rulers of the shit. They were sophisticated. There's a lot of history there. Okay, tremendous calendar. Right, it's just beautiful history. Right now, they weren't perfect. Right, they weren't perfect. I don't think any culture is, but like they had their own religion. They had their own thing going. Right. When the Spaniards came, all right, they showed up. They didn't just show up in Mexico first. It's not the way it went, right? When they quote unquote discovered it, right, that was over there, man, in the freaking Caribbean and shit, right? So that they took over all that shit first, right? They brought slaves with them and everything, right? That's why there's black people there, right? In the Caribbeans, right? When they got here, right? First of all, Cortez came here. Well, of course he came here fucking illegally, but what I mean by he came here illegally, he came here without order from the king, right? He wasn't supposed to, they were trying to, the Spaniards actually wanted to arrest his ass, right? But that almost became obsolete once he discovered all the gold and riches and shit from the Aztec Empire. They forgave that shit quick, right? What people need to understand is the amount of natives that were killed, right? You see, when you take a history course here in the United States, they make it sound like a couple hundred Spaniards just destroyed the entire Aztec Empire. They make it sound, and it doesn't even make sense, right? What happened was, right, first of all, Montezuma was a fucking blithering idiot, right? And he had these like beliefs and shit. And he thought that Cortez and the Spaniards were like, he thought it was just a prophecy, right? Now, there's conflicting stories about that, and we're not in Montezuma's head, right? But somewhere along the lines of a prophecy and whatnot. Long story short, Cortez takes him prisoner, right? He has their leader prisoner. Ultimately, dies. The Spaniards say that the Aztecs killed him, okay? And of course, the natives say that the Spaniards killed him, right? He said, she said. Both are very likely. It is likely they could have killed Montezuma for being a fucking traitor, right? And it is likely that they fucking stabbed Montezuma in the back once they were done using him, the Spaniards, right? So both are possible. I don't feel sorry for him either way. All right? Now, I'm not going to get into the Malinche and all that. That's a whole nother deal, right? It was that broad that Cortez was using to translate, right? There's several things that the Spaniards did. First of all, okay, earlier I said, the Aztecs, they weren't perfect, right? So they weren't very nice to some other tribes, and that's what you would call haters today, right? So a lot of tribes, they were not too happy with the power that the Aztecs had, and the Aztecs were not very nice to them, right? So of course they helped the Spaniards, right? Fight the Aztecs. That's number one, right? So they found a way to get the natives to fight one another, right? So from day one, from the very moment the Spaniards got here, okay, like they almost mastered that shit, right? Getting the natives to fight one another and shit, right? They were already beefing one another and all that. Now that alone wasn't enough to dethrone the Aztec Empire. Now I'm not saying that eventually they would have gotten, a fucking armada like all the way across the sea, and eventually they would have taken over the empire, probably, right? Because they did have superior weapons, right? But that's not how Cortez, defeated the Aztecs. right? What happened was when Cortez took off, because they ran them the hell out of there, of Tenochtitlan, they came back, right? A bunch of Aztecs were fucking dead, right? From diseases they never even, ever encountered. They were not immune to the diseases that were brought here by Europe, right? And once, you would be a fool to think that they didn't realize, holy shit, like if I sneeze on these fuckers, they fucking die. Okay? I mean, that's just, it was literally the first ever biological, warfare that it was ever engaged on anybody, right? It was, fucking the diseases, fucking malaria, chickenpox, right? Just slaughtered the Aztec Empire. That shit spread like wildfire, right? Anyway, my point is, a bunch of Aztecs died, right? A lot of them died, right? And later on, they basically enslaved the native tribes around the area, right? And they founded what they would call New Spain, right? They would create missions. I could just walk down the street and there's they sled a mission here, right? They would have the native tribes build them, right? And they were made to be in the center of the town, and they would convert the natives to Christianity or Catholicism, to be more specific, right? And to a certain degree, I mean, the Catholic Church was involved in this somehow, right? But I'm not going to say the Catholic Church is completely innocent on any of this, right? But I will say that these native tribes were definitely forcefully, made to convert. It's the way it is, right? The Spaniards created a class system, right? If you were pure-blooded Spaniard, you were first class. If you were mestizo, which was mixed, right, with a native and a Spaniard, you were second class. If you were native, you were lower class, right? Now, you still see the effects of that today in Mexico, right? It's very visible. It's not that hard to see, right? You see it in the novelas, okay? All the light-skinned people are the rich people. All the brown-skinned people are the poor people. In the fucking novelas, you see that shit, right? My point is this. All that was just to tell you, all right? You can tell me all you want about Spain and all that. The European, the Spaniards that showed up, the conquistadores that showed up were light-skinned, right? They were white. They were European. Right? The conquistadores that showed up were European. Right? And many of them married native girls here. Right? So that only 10, given that history, scientifically speaking, to suggest that only 10% of Mexico has European ancestry, that is just factually incorrect. Right? Now, once New Spain was expanded and all that, right? The New Spain, this was a big empire, okay? In Mexico City, I mean, that's what we now know as Mexico City. Before that, it was Tenochtitlan. That was the capital. Right now, eventually, right, there was a revolution. The Spaniards were kicked out of Mexico, right, in the revolution, Mexican Revolution, right? When the Spaniards were out, right, and once Mexico was established as a country, as a nation, right, which expanded far beyond, where the Aztecs were, where the Triple Alliance was. It expanded far beyond that. We're talking about many tribes, all the way up through what we now know as Texas, California, Nevada, all that was all Spain conquered all that from the natives, right? Once they kicked the Spaniards out, the Spaniards did two things. One, they sold part of that land, right, to the United States, right? Mexico kicked them out, so they didn't believe that was, valid, because they were no longer the owners of that land, quote unquote, right? It catch my drift that's part of the reason how the United States justified the land grabbing that they did against Mexico, right? Now, once Mexico was established as a nation, have people from all over the world moved to Mexico at some point? Sure, World War II, a bunch of Germans fleeing Hitler, they went to Mexico. All right? You'll see a lot of dudes, man, they look white as shit, and they speak better Spanish than me. They'll cross the border at times, and they'll it's funny sometimes, because they'll be like, "Hello, sir." They don't even fucking speak English, but anyway, a bunch of Germans in Mexico, right? There's a lot of Europeans, that for whatever reason, whether they moved for economic reasons, whether it was during the Great Depression, all right? During the Great Depression, a lot of people fled to Mexico. Shit wasn't that bad in Mexico during the Great Depression, right? My great-great-grandfather was actually like a dentist from Massachusetts, right? That moved from there and he moved over to Mexico. Met my great-great-grandmother there, right? But anyway, since then, I believe that's where they're getting the 10% European ancestry. They're not taking into account the Spaniards, all right, that invaded and founded New Spain, right? I think they're talking about Europeans that migrated to the nation that was now known as Mexico, right? I believe that's where the 10% is, right? Now, if somebody says, hey, Mexican is a nationality, they're not wrong either, because it is a nationality. The country's called Mexico, and you're a Mexican citizen if you live in Mexico, right? My only thing is, that's not all it is, though. Only a nationality. Well, not really, right? It really depends. So everything's about identity. Everybody wants some form of identity, right? Sometimes as far back as you can go to a certain extent. So if let's say someone moved for whatever reason, from Denmark to Mexico, right? They have a kid in Mexico, and that kid, when he's older, moves to the United States, right? He's not quite going to be classified as a Mexican American, right? I guess he can, but not really, right? So this, because his parents were from Europe, they just happened to live in Mexico, right, for a couple of years. He was born in Mexico, and later that kid lives in the U.S., right? This is a hypothetical example. That wouldn't really be classified as a Mexican American, right? That's a very unique circumstance, right? If I wasn't born in Mexico, but I think what it refers to, because there's a way to look at it culturally, right? There's a Mexican culture, there's Mexican roots, and then there's a Mexican nationality, right? And I just think those are different things, right? Also, I don't know how anyone could possibly get the 10% figure, given the fact that the Mexican government, at least not from my knowledge, unless they started it recently, don't keep track of the census. They don't track that, right? They don't track any of that whatsoever, right? I guess a lot of people assume that because in the United States they do, right? But anyway, and very interesting, discussion. Okay, a lot of people wonder, like take brown pride, right? Brown pride is like, it's not really a thing in Mexico. It's not. It's not a thing there. Brown pride is a thing in the United States. And the reason for that, and it doesn't take like a lot of thinking to kind of grasp this, right? And just in general, right? If someone were to cross the border from Mexico, it's going to be somebody poor, right? Like no rich Mexican kid whose dad could buy him a Lamborghini, right? It's going to like illegally cross the border to the United States to get a job. That's not going to happen. The majority of Mexicans that cross the border, legally or illegally, right? The majority of them are brown skin, right? And that's why in the United States, just in general, Mexican Americans are brown skin, right? And that's because if you track the roots of it, they generally come from lower class families, right? And it goes back to talking about the effects of it, to the class system that the Spaniards put in place, centuries ago. I mean, that's the way it is. That's why when Canelo Alvarez, right, became a well-known attraction, and people will look at him and be like, he doesn't look Mexican, right? To a lot of people that don't really hang around Mexicans a lot, maybe that was kind of surprising, because the Mexicans should look brown, right? Well, that's because, number one, there's definitely light-skinned Mexicans. There's dark-skinned Mexicans. There's brown-skinned Mexicans, right? It's multicultural, right? But the majority of Mexicans that are in the United States are brown-skinned, right? So, like for example, no one's saying that there's no brown-skinned rich people in Mexico. Nobody's saying that. But what I will say is that the majority of rich people in Mexico are light-skinned. The majority of poor people in Mexico, right, are either natives or very brown skin, right? And that is that. Till this day, calling somebody an Indio in Mexico, right, and it could vary depending which, Mexico, it's, like I said, it's very multicultural, right? But unfortunately, areas I've been to in Mexico, calling somebody an idiot is calling them an Indio, right? Like ignorant and shit. So it's a very like ugly thing that is still there. That's it. Hope there's been some enlightening here, right? So what is it? What is a Mexican? Right? Somebody says it's a nationality. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that's not the full story, right? And it's an ethnicity, it's a culture, it's a nationality, right? It's all those things. And it can vary on a person by person basis and where your roots come from, right? But overall, that's the gist of it, right? Okay. Anyway, peace.